My name is Jenna, and I've been married for 3 years now at the age of 30. My husband, Seth, who's 32, works at his family business. His family owns a wholesale liquor company, where his father is the president and Seth serves as the director. Ever since we got married, I've been working there as well as an office clerk. My mother-in-law has never involved herself with the family business, having been a stay-at-home mom for the longest time. And when I say stay-at-home, she used to employ a housekeeper, so she really never had to lift a finger. When I married into the family and started living with my in-laws, they let the housekeeper go.
Why would we need a housekeeper when we've got a daughter-in-law?
My mother-in-law remarked, and both my father-in-law and husband seemed to agree with her. It seems my father-in-law, who was taken into his wife's family, has never been able to stand up to his wife. Growing up, Seth saw his father always obeying his mother's commands. It's as if he believes that obeying every word is the natural order of things. Even when we visited for the first time before we got married, it was evident that she was the one who ruled the house. Since becoming a part of this family, I've been burdened with both housework and office work. The alcohol wholesale business has been in a tight spot lately and we can't afford to hire more staff, so I've been lending a hand. They had to let the housekeeper go because the money to pay her was running out. Nevertheless, this company, which has been around since my husband's grandfather's time, manages to keep going thanks to long-standing business relationships. The grandfather founded the company in his lifetime and expanded it to its current scale. There are about 10 employees who handle sales and deliveries, even delivering quite far away. The grandfather, having no son of his own, had my father-in-law, who was a promising employee, take over the business. He arranged for my father-in-law to marry his only daughter and entrusted the company to them. I never met this grandfather myself, but apparently, he was a stern man. Dad is a patient man, Seth often says, praising his father. He never got angry no matter what was said to him. Grandpa was pretty stern, but Mom is even more so. Seth, who accepts whatever his mother tells him, talks about it as if it's someone else's business. Until we got married and started living together, I couldn't have imagined this side of Seth. While we were dating, he seemed like a bit of a wild one. But at home, he becomes almost invisible. He also lively and energetic at work, but turns quiet as soon as he gets home. The same is true for my father-in-law, who's bustling at the company, but becomes as quiet as a church mouse at home. I was shocked at first by their transformation, but now I find myself in the same boat. In this house, my mother-in-law is the absolute authority, and no one dares to defy her. When we first started living together, she made a huge fuss because she didn't like the food I made. The dinner I made casually was apparently too spicy for her, and she tossed it into the trash after just one bite. In a panic, I quickly apologized.
I'm sorry, was it too spicy?
My mother-in-law made me stand before her and began her lecture.
Are you trying to make me sick by making me eat something this spicy?
I was petrified by the sight of my mother-in-law face, which looked like a demon. Seth and my father-in-law stopped eating their meals and sat rigidly, their eyes cast downwards. When I cast a fleeting glance at them for help, I saw Seth's face, even paler than mine. When I looked at my father-in-law, he too had a pale face, just like Seth. From their expressions, I could imagine how terrifying my mother-in-law lectures were. After enduring more than 30 minutes of my mother-in-law sermon, I had forgotten why she was angry in the first place. Even my angry mother-in-law seemed to have gotten hungry and ended up eating the meals I made. Seth and my father-in-law have always lived with my mother-in-law, so they've learned to live quietly at home. That's when I started to regret marrying into such a formidable family. When my mother-in-law was a young adult, her father's company was at its peak. An employee who had been working for the company for a long time spoke nostalgically about it when he was retiring. Apparently, they had more than double the number of employees they have now, and their sales were incomparably higher. My mother-in-law had experienced this prosperous era and finds it hard to lower her standard of living. That's probably why she used to hire a housekeeper and never did any household chores herself. My mother-in-law loves shopping and often goes out, bringing back loads of things. I don't know how much money she spends, but given the company's current performance, it's starting to worry me. Seth and my father-in-law don't say anything about her shopping, so I keep my mouth shut too. If I made an ill-considered comment, I might get a lecture that lasts longer than 30 minutes. Before I knew it, I had started to think like Seth and my father-in-law. For about a year after our marriage, I was fully occupied trying to get used to the lifestyle in my husband's family and the work at the company. By the time 2 years had passed, I was facing a bigger problem. We were unable to have a child. Particularly in my MIL's mind was her experience of not having a son in her father's generation and having to take in a sister-in-law. She worries that the same thing should not happen in Seth's generation. As we approached our 3rd year of marriage, she started to make sarcastic comments every chance she got.
When are you going to give us an heir? You didn't marry into this family to be an office clerk.
Even the sight of a baby on TV would set her off.
There are so many babies in the world. Why don't we have one here?
She'd glare at me. Seth and my father-in-law would disappear whenever this topic started. Hearing this day after day, I began to feel there was no place for me in this family. I wished Seth would help, but no matter how many times I confided in him, he'd say, "Don't worry about it, just let it go." As if he didn't want to be involved. At the same time, the company's situation was deteriorating. My father-in-law company, with its old-fashioned business style, was unable to get work from trendy eateries and the like. My mother-in-law seemed to sense this, even though Seth and my father-in-law didn't talk about it with her. Still, she couldn't stop her favorite activity, shopping, and brought home all sorts of things. Whether she was angry at herself, I don't know, but she'd come home from shopping in a bad mood. Then her anger would be directed at me.
It's Jenna's fault for not producing an heir. That's why I ended up buying unnecessary things.
My mother-in-law, who blamed me for incomprehensible reasons, seemed to pin all the blame on me. Perhaps because of her daily grumbles, my health started to fail. I asked Seth and my father-in-law to let me take a break from work and got tested at the hospital. Seth seemed hopeful that I might be pregnant. But it was due to stress. It would be best to rest a little in a relaxing environment. But there was no relaxing environment for me at present, nor could I afford to rest. Knowing it was impossible, I explained the situation to Seth and my in-laws when I got home. The doctor said it would be better if I could rest a little, but it's okay. Surprisingly, my mother-in-law said, "You should go back to your parents' house and rest for a while." She even told my father-in-law, "We can manage, right? It seems like we're not so busy right now." It seemed like she was urging them to let me take a break from work. My father-in-law, surprised by my mother-in-law words, replied, "We can cover for you, it's okay," with a relieved look on his face. I was shocked by my mother-in-law's unexpected words. At this time, I thought she might actually be a kind person. But that was a big mistake. She was just a person with a bad temper after all. The next day, I went back to my parents' house right away to rest. When I told them on the phone that I was coming back, they seemed very worried. When my mother saw me in person, she said, "You look pale and thin. Haven't you lost weight?" She asked with a voice on the verge of tears. "First, take some rest and recover." My father also welcomed me. He seemed to understand everything from my expression. He must have understood that things weren't going well with my in-laws because stress was the cause. I felt bad for worrying my parents by coming back home. My health improved quickly after I returned to my parents' house. Clearly, the environment at my in-laws' house was the cause of stress. About a week after I arrived at my parents' house, my in-laws suddenly showed up. I could understand if my husband Seth showed up, but I never thought my in-laws would come to my parents' house. My mother-in-law suddenly started yelling as soon as she arrived.
"We're returning this good-for-nothing daughter-in-law who can't even bear an heir. It's up to the parents to take responsibility."
Even my mother, who met her at the door, was too surprised to respond. My father rushed to the entrance and challenged her.
"I can't let it go if you call my daughter a failure." "What do you mean?"
My mother-in-law fought back when my father immediately rebutted her.
3 years into marriage and still no baby. What's more, she's weak and can't work."
My mother, finally regaining her composure, counterattacked.
"Isn't Seth also responsible for not having a child?"
My mother-in-law dismissed her with a snort, making baseless excuses.
"There's nothing wrong with Seth. The problem lies with your daughter."
My father, maintaining his composure against my mother-in-law's unreasonable remarks, said,
"If you insist on that, we'll take our daughter back. Are you fine with Jenna leaving?"
I, who didn't want to face my mother-in-law, was watching the situation from a place where they couldn't see me. My father glanced at me for confirmation. The image of Seth flashed in my mind, but I nodded. Seth hasn't visited me once since I came back home, and he can't stand up against his mother's remarks. There's a limit to calling someone a failure or trying to return them like some defective product.
"From now on, we'll have no relation with you, please remember that."
My father responded very politely. My father-in-law, hiding behind my mother-in-law, seemed like he wanted to say something. However, my mother-in-law cut him off.
"We'll send the failure of a daughter-in-law luggage later. We'll hire a divorce lawyer, too."
With that, my in-laws, who glared at my parents, left.
"Why didn't you say something more to such rude remarks?"
My mother, this time, turned on my father. Calming her down, he said,
"There's no use talking to that woman. Don't worry, we'll make her realize her mistake through our actions, not words."
My mother, not understanding what my father meant, was still furious. I, however, understood immediately. My father-in-law also knew, which is why he tried to say something. My father runs a restaurant chain and has a business relationship with my father-in-law company. As someone who used to work in administration, I knew this. In fact, it was my father who introduced me to Seth. He had been doing business with my father-in-law company since the time my Gil was the president. My father's company, which started from a single store and struggled at first, received help from my grandfather-in-law. To this day, with a significantly larger number of stores, he procures all the alcohol and beverages from my father-in-law company. To be honest, it seems cheaper to source from elsewhere, but they continued trading out of gratitude to my grandfather-in-law. Given that my father's company also runs an affiliated pub, it's a big account for my father-in-law company. My mother-in-law, who didn't know about this, was able to maintain her attitude towards my father. The next day, my father called my father-in-law company and told the person in charge,
"We're ending all transactions with you."
The flustered person in charge immediately reported to my father-in-law and Seth. My father-in-law, who had not anticipated that all transactions would be stopped, finally lost his temper with my mother-in-law.
"Because of you, we've lost a major business deal."
The normally gentle father-in-law fury and the loss of a major deal seemed to have shocked my mother-in-law.
"What? It's because of me?"
My father-in-law explained to my mother-in-law that I am the daughter of a major client. When Seth and I got married, this was brought up, and my father-in-law thought my mother-in-law remembered it. She, who didn't care about business, had completely forgotten and only then remembered.
Now that you mention it, I vaguely recall something about it when Seth was getting married.
Finally grasping the severity of the situation, my mother-in-law was flustered. Seth also lashed out at her.
What were you thinking, deciding on Jenna and my divorce on your own?
I had reported to Seth about my mother-in-law demanding a divorce from me.
I don't want a divorce. Moreover, if things continue this way, our company will collapse.
Given that my father's company is a large client and profitable, if the transactions stop, they wouldn't be able to manage the business. Presently, all trading partners are demanding lower prices, and they're hardly making any profit. My father's company, due to the relationship between my GIL and my father, hadn't requested any price reduction. Such a relationship of trust seemed to be the reason why my father introduced Seth to me. That evening, my in-laws and Seth came to my parents' house, but my father did not allow them inside. At the door, my father asked,
"After all the disrespect, what brings you here today?"
His anger was evident. As my father-in-law apologized from the bottom of his heart and pleaded, "We are sorry for our behavior yesterday. Could we ask you to reconsider our trade relationship?" Despite his plea, my father didn't seem to lend an ear.
"We were trading out of respect for the former president, but let's end it now,"
my father said, and my father-in-law apologized over and over again. Then, turning to Seth and my mother-in-law, he said,
"You two should apologize as well."
Prompted by my father-in-law, both seemed unwilling. Moreover, my mother-in-law stated,
"Why do we have to go this far? Let's just give up and find another trading partner,"
expressing her refusal to prostrate. Seth also followed suit.
"There's no need for us to apologize," as Mom said.
They wouldn't listen to my father-in-law. Seeing Seth's attitude, my father became even angrier.
"Seth, I'm disappointed in you. Why didn't you defend my daughter?"
At my father's words, Seth couldn't respond and kept his gaze low. "Because you always do whatever my mother-in-law says, I've been suffering." Without thinking, I rushed to the entrance and finally voiced my feelings towards Seth. Seth tried to speak, but, watching my mother-in-law facial expression, he couldn't say anything. Seeing him like this, I decided that divorce was the only option. Until now, I thought we might be able to mend things. But even that tiny hope vanished completely.
"I'll pick up my belongings later,"
I told Seth clearly. My mother-in-law didn't seem to like this attitude of mine and started making a fuss. "Yes, that's right. Seth needs to get a divorce from you quickly and find a new bride." The mother-in-law who had come to apologize started to badmouth me again.
"This time, we'll get a bride who isn't a failure and can give us a successor."
With that, she loudly walked out of our house alone. Seth immediately followed her. My father-in-law, who was left behind, was urged by my father to stop apologizing. "I've made my decision. I'm going to close the company and leave the house." Surprising both my father and me.
"Is your business situation that bad?"
My father asked, and my father-in-law responded with a bitter smile. "I've been considering closing down the company for a few years now due to continued losses." While I knew their situation was tough, I didn't think it was that serious. "I worked hard to leave the company to my son, but it was all in vain with him behaving like this." Hunching his back as he left. The next day, when I went to pick up my stuff from my in-laws' house, nobody was there. As I was moving my belongings and about to show up at the company, I found a great uproar. Creditors who heard rumors of the bankruptcy were swarming, and my father-in-law and Seth were handling them. I left without greeting anyone. A few days later, my father-in-law company declared bankruptcy. My mother-in-law, who had a large amount of debt, filed for personal bankruptcy and ran away with Seth. It seems Seth intends to follow his mother wherever she goes. My father-in-law is looking for re-employment for the remaining employees. I wish Seth could have thought about the employees until the end like his father did. Back home for rest, I became well again. I never thought I would get a divorce during my convalescence. Seeing me depressed after the divorce, a friend who was worried about me introduced me to a man. This man, who has firm beliefs, captivated me. After about a year of dating, we got married, and we were blessed with a baby. When I got pregnant easily, something I had been hoping for so long, I thought the problem must have been with Seth. Now, I can laugh about it, but at that time, I was so troubled that it affected my health. Perhaps a peaceful environment was good for me. In any case, now I can't wait for the arrival of our baby. No employee by that name works here, I'm afraid. I realized my husband Cody left something behind when he went on a business trip, so I called his office and told his name. To my surprise, they said no such person worked there. What could this mean? Suspicious, I started rummaging through Cody's belongings in his room. Then, from his luggage, I found something shocking, something unbelievable. When I found this astonishing truth, I decided to revenge. My name is Rachel Thunderbolt. This year marks my 3rd year of marriage to Cody. Since I was the only daughter, Cody became an adopted son-in-law of the Thunderbolt family to carry on our name, and his last name became Thunderbolt too. He gladly accepted to take on my family's name. We had a blissful marriage, usually busy with our jobs, but we promised to have a baby someday. I could never have predicted our happy life would come to such a sudden end. It all started on the day Cody left for his business trip. While cleaning his room, I found a large envelope. It looked like important documents for his trip.
Oh no!
I tried calling Cody, but his cell phone was off and I couldn't reach him. Maybe he was on a plane or on Amtrak train, going through the tunnel. Thinking it urgent, I called his company next. Hello, this is Seven Forest Corporation.
I'm Cody Thunderbolt's wife. He forgot something important and I need to contact him right away.
Cody Thunderbolt. Please hold for a moment. The man on the phone, presumably Cody's colleague, sounded perplexed. Soon, the call was put on hold, and music began to play. After being on hold for about 3 minutes, the same man returned with an odd word. I'm sorry, but we don't have an employee named Cody Thunderbolt. Are you sure you have the right company?
What? But you are Seven Forest Corporation, right?
Yes, that's correct, but I was certain it was Cody's workplace. I double-checked the phone number, and it wasn't a common company name. Despite repeatedly confirming the company name and address, they kept insisting they had no employee by that name. All right, thank you. Sorry to bother you. I hung up the phone, utterly confused, but one thing was certain. Cody was lying about something. With a mix of confusion and a desire to find some clue, I searched his room again. And there, in his bag, I found an employee ID card for Seven Forest Corporation. It had his photo on it. He definitely worked there, no doubt about it. But the name written here. It said Cody Harris, a completely different last name. Confused and dizzy, I squatted down. I took a deep breath to calm my mind. Cody had a big secret. Convinced of this, I couldn't just sit still. I went straight to a private investigator to look into his background. Cody's business trip, if his words were right, was for a week. The investigator was skilled, and I got the report before Cody returned. But the content was shocking. To put it bluntly, Rachel Thunderbolt, you're single.
What? I don't understand what you mean.
Cody has another family.
Does that mean he's cheating on me?
Well, it's more like you're the other woman.
What?
According to the investigator, there was no marriage record between me and Cody. He had another family, with whom he was legally married, so they were his real wife and children. Was I not married? What does this mean? It was a shockingly unbelievable fact. After receiving the report from the investigator, I couldn't say anything and rode the bus home, absent-minded.
We'll need quite a bit of money for a wedding, huh? I can't afford it right now, but one day we'll definitely have one. I'll work harder so we can also go on a honeymoon.
3 years ago, Cody said that with a refreshing smile and promised, "It's okay if we don't have a wedding. I'm happy as is." I smiled and said that. His parents had passed away, leaving him all alone, so we only reported our marriage to my parents. Since I was the only daughter, he took the initiative to take on the Thunderbolt name. Of course, my parents were delighted with this. We signed the marriage application, but around that time, I got busy at work and couldn't find time to go to the city office with him. "Rachel, you're busy, right? I'll submit it when the time is right." So, I entrusted him with the application, assuming he had submitted it. But in reality, he never did, and so Cody and I were just strangers. We both had different jobs and social insurance, and we kept our finances separate. So, something that should have been apparent from tax documents or something went completely unnoticed. Cody must have known and done it on purpose. I believed we were married and lived as such. Thinking about it made me feel a deep anger rising within me. A week passed, and it was the day Cody returned home. I left work early to wait for him.
"Cody, we need to talk."
As soon as he entered the living room with the carry-on bag he used for his trip, I talked to him. "What?" "I have souvenirs, you know," he said nonchalantly. Seeing that just made me angrier.
"Your real name is Cody Harris, isn't it?" What?"
I confronted Cody with the employee ID card I found in his room, and he looked shaken for a moment.
"Well, I just kept Harris as my name at work." "What are you talking about? When we met, you called yourself Cody Smith." "Did I? I don't remember."
Cody tried to feign ignorance, but I presented him with the private investigator's report.
"I went behind your back, sorry, but I had a private investigator look into you. You have another family, and I was just a fling, right?"
He seemed taken aback by the evidence but quickly tried to regain composure with a smile.
"It wasn't just a fling. I take everything seriously. Don't give me that. You clearly said you'd submit our marriage application." "Did I say that? Then how come we're not married?" Why is that?"
Cody kept making irresponsible words, trying to dodge my questioning. His careless attitude only made me more stressed. "You were the one who said, it's okay if we don't have a wedding. I'm happy as is."
"That's different. This is a case of bigamy, a violation of the law."
"That's fine. Since I never submitted the marriage application with you, it's not bigamy.
So my feelings don't matter at all."
Finally, my anger exploded. I slammed the table, causing a glass to topple and water to spill onto the floor. "Ah, you're so noisy. I didn't think you were such a troublesome woman." Cody picked up his carry-on bag again and opened the living room door.
"Then, I'm going home." "Going home? Where to?"
"To my real home, obviously. It seems like a hassle to stay with you now. I won't come here for a while. Cool off in the meantime." Leaving these words as if I was the villain, Cody left the house.
"Coward! Irresponsible man!"
I threw a tissue box, but the front door closed mercilessly, and Cody never came back after that. I won't let this go. Didn't he realize in these 3 years that I'm not a woman who would just let things slide? I decided to make Cody pay for this. The next day, I called Misty Harris, Cody's legal wife, whose number was in the investigator's report. A woman answered, and I could hear a boy's voice in the background. "Hello, are you Misty Harris, Cody's wife?"
Yes, I am. My name is Rachel Thunderbolt. I've been, well acquainted with Cody. Unsure how to start, my words trailed off, and Misty sounded very puzzled. I briefly explained the situation and arranged to meet her in person soon. At a coffee shop, as soon as we met, Misty glared at me with disdain. You have the nerve to show up after messing with someone else's husband. Wait, please. I'm a victim too. I showed her the investigator's report and explained everything in detail. I still can't believe I was the other woman. Cody doing such a thing. Unforgivable. Misty believed me after seeing the evidence and was visibly furious. I understand the situation now. Not only did he play with your feelings, Rachel, but he's also been deceiving me all this time. So, I want to punish Cody, and I need your help. All right, I'll help you. And so, we conspired together to plan our revenge on Cody. The day of reckoning came. On his day off, Cody was relaxing in front of the TV at Misty's house. Their elementary school-aged child was out with friends, so seizing the moment, I stormed into the house. Your other wife has graciously come to visit, Misty announced, leading me to the living room. Cody, who had been lounging, sprang up in shock at the sight of me. Geez! Rachel! Long time no see, Cody. What? Why? How? Cody, in confusion, pointed alternately between us. What's this? When did you two meet? Misty and I have become very close friends. Huh? At that moment, the doorbell rang, and Misty's parents, along with Cody's, arrived, looking furious. Cody, who was lounging around in sweatpants, straightened up quickly. What? What brings everyone here together? He was completely intimidated by their devilish expressions. Rachel, did you set this up? I got Misty's help too. So, Cody, you have no allies here. By yesterday, Misty had already told her parents that Cody was cheating. I had managed to get the contact details of Cody's parents, who were actually alive, and sent them a registered letter with the investigator's report and a summary of everything that had happened. And I called them here for Cody's punishment. What are you doing? What's your aim with all this? First, you have something you need to do, right? You know what it is? You want money? No. You should start with an apology. Pressed by my stern words, Cody looked pleadingly at Misty, who just stared back expressionlessly. We'll demand compensation after you've done what you should. Right, Cody! Misty and I towered over Cody, who had squatted down in exhaustion. Both Misty's and Cody's parents surrounded him with stern looks. Wait, if you two are getting along so well, there's no need to fight, right? Why not keep things as they are, maintain both families? Even in this situation, Cody tried to escape responsibility. He was just alpha an irresponsible person. I like both of you, I wanted to maintain good relationships, something like that. His shameless attitude was almost refreshing in its thoroughness. But both sets of parents berated him fiercely. Are you joking? Don't you feel sorry for Misty and Rachel? Shouts and tearful voices filled the air, and Cody shrank back, letting out a pathetic whimper. I took a deep breath and spoke calmly. I understand exactly what you want. You do? So we can keep things this way, right? No way! I'm utterly disappointed. I'm breaking up with you. And I'll be expecting compensation, so make sure you're prepared. What? No. As I declared my decision to part ways, Misty followed suit. I'm divorcing you too. Expect to pay compensation and child support. I don't ever want to see your face again. Get out. Cody looked up at me, his eyes tearing, and tried to plead. Before I say, don't think of coming back to my place. I won't let you in. I'll apologize properly. Let's submit our marriage application this time, right? Let's get married. Don't be ridiculous. I never want to see you again. Goodbye.
Cody was disowned by his parents then and there, losing his last refuge. He was ousted from Misty's house by everyone present and stood dazed outside the gate. That was the anticlimactic end of our relationship. Now for the epilogue. Cody, having to pay us compensation and losing everything, stayed at cheap hotels and internet cafes. But after my call to his company about his business trip raised suspicion, his boss confronted him, and his double life was exposed. The whole company found out through the colleague who took the call, so Cody quit his job, fleeing in shame. True to his irresponsible nature, he ran away just because he felt uncomfortable, despite having no money. Eventually, Cody ran out of money and became homeless, as I heard. As for me, I ended my relationship with Cody, but the emotional scars of spending 3 years as the other woman didn't heal easily. I buried myself in work to forget, leading to a life consumed by my job. A male colleague, concerned about me, asked, "Is something wrong?" and we started going out for drinks together. While venting over drinks, I found myself crying, but he just silently supported me. Having lost trust in people, I began to feel that maybe I could trust this man, and we started dating. I'm experiencing a modest happiness now. Someday, I'm sure I'll find true happiness.